y'all. This is Julian Baudouin. This is another episode of Roots and Revenue. Oh, shoot, man, I believe we're in episode 5 now. So, again, if you're a first time listener, the goal of this podcast is to make sure we're communicating and learning about the person before we're learning about the profession. We believe that social economics is super, super important to success. And we definitely want to take care of the people who are out here doing the work ground level first. So today, I'm happy to have my friend, my brother, Terry Liggins with us here today. We're going to have an amazing conversation. But first, before we dive into the conversation, Terry, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thanks for having me. Go ahead and greet you with respect. I have so much respect for you, Julian. The Hub, South Dakota, what it's doing, how far it's come, and where it's going. I've been watching the rollout of these episodes, and just honored to be here today.
Yeah. So what do you do, Terry? Tell me about Terry Liggins.
You know,
Freedom Life Coach. Sir.
yeah, I believe in people. I'm an encourager. I got lots of different strengths. One of the primary ones is called exhortation, and it's lifting other people up. I really get fulfilled by doing that. I got my own experiences with feeling the opposite of that, but there was a time in my life where I realized that the best thing I could do is role model what I wanted to see others doing for me
Man, that's big.
and for other people. And I just moved away from what can I get to what can I give. And so I'm an encourager. I exhort people. I do that through my two companies, TLC Services and also Herd of Life Coach Foundation. And through both of the companies, I essentially come alongside of leaders, executive leaders, or at-risk teenagers, vulnerable adults, and lift them up. Let them know that they can get through the hard things that they're facing, whether that's in the workplace, whether that's at home, anywhere. I just like lifting people up and helping them to believe in what they can accomplish.
Man, that's what's up. That's huge. That's absolutely amazing. Tell us about who Terry was before who Terry is now. Where you from? How'd you grow up?
Yeah.
And then we'll probably dive into some of the hurdles that you've had to overcome, or jump over
Yeah,
in your language, or jump over to get to where you are.
I love that. I love hurdles. I was a collegiate hurdler and a high school hurdler, still slow. And you like to think that, don't you, Julius? But when I first started hurdling, it was back home in Omaha, Nebraska. So I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, which is just about 2.5 hours south of where we're at right now, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I grew up in a single parent home there. My mother's wonderful, though. My mom, Cynthia Liggins. She is resilient. She is full of joy. She enjoys to celebrate others and herself. And she keeps her door open to anyone who needs a warm place. Anyone please a place to sit, a place to sleep, place to eat. I've got the neighborhood mom. And so for me, even though I grew up, in poverty, I grew up in an environment that had gang affiliation all around it, drug use all around it, and a lot of different impacts on my life because of that. My own experiences with gangs, my own experiences with drugs starting at the age of 12. When you grow up in a single parent home and you get to that kind of coming of age part of your life, you got a couple different choices of how you're going to get through this kind of 12 to 17. And for most of us boys, the option we have for our protection and belonging is getting involved in a gang.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened for me at age 12. I did end up getting gang affiliated, again, experimenting with drugs and alcohol and these different types of things. And before you know it, that leads to a juvenile detention center. It leads to juvenile probation. And I had these experiences. I've been on diversion. I've been on probation. And I look back over my life, Julian, and I'm grateful, though, for that accountability that I received from the justice system, knowing that the way it's shaped and how it's built, it is definitely unfair as it pertains to people of color. Disproportionate minority contact is a real thing, but also people who have issues with boundaries is also a thing. People who haven't been taught or role modeled how not to cross certain lines, and to be law abiding and to not do crime is an appropriate boundary to be mindful of, and to do the work to how do I live fruitful, abundant, prosperous, in bounds,
Yep.
not out of bounds.
For sure.
Not that we shouldn't advocate for unjust laws, but when I'm stealing cars, breaking into people's houses because I don't have, right? It's not because, I'm evil or wicked. It's because I lack,
Right.
and I want, right? And so without supervision, without a dad around, with a mom working 2 jobs, I'm able to roam. And now I'm roaming with my other friends that are roaming. And we end up doing things that end me up in juvenile detention, probation, and diversion. But I'm grateful for what I learned through those experiences. I still have a relationship with my house arrest officer today. He is a community difference maker back in Omaha, Nebraska. Terrence Backey has been doing that work for years and continues to do that work. And I'm grateful for my experience with the justice system, even as a youth. But, so not only did I, do crime and end up, joining gangs for protection and belonging, I also became a dad. My oldest is 24 years old now.
And what age did you become a father?
15.
Okay.
Yep. 8 days after my 15th birthday, my oldest child was born. Today, I'm a father of 3, a 24-year-old son, a 20-year-old son, and an 11-year-old daughter. I became a dad 8 days after my 15th birthday. So that was pretty jarring as well, as far as like early life experiences. And Julian, as I, again, just reflect on my upbringing, there's a lot there. My mother, for the first 10 years of my life, was in an active issue with substance use, a drug called crack cocaine. I know people in the Black community know exactly what I'm talking about. And so, she was on crack for 10 years. And then got sick and tired of being sick and tired, is what she said.
Yeah.
Left that unhealthy relationship, and I ended up in a women's and children's shelter at the age of 10 for 90 days. And that helped turn my mother life around. She's been in recovery from that drug since and ain't had it since. So that's 25, 29 years. My mother's been clean and sober of that. And
If I had one of those applause buttons,
you hit it right now.
that'd be around.
Come on, I do like to give it up for my mom every time I tell that story, and she supports me in telling the story because it ends well.
Yeah.
We go through hard things, but we get through hard things. And we've got a spirit as a Black folk that is incomparable, right? What we've gone through as a people. I like to tell people this, Julie. I almost got fired up. I'm gonna get fired up.
Well, you should. You're preaching.
Do you know that Black Americans who are born here in the United States are only here by way of being survivors? That your bloodline is a bloodline that survived what this country attempted to do to us as a people.
And continuing to survive.
And continuing to survive.
But what this country is still trying to do to us as a people.
Salute that. Yeah, I salute that. And so in that, because it's still happening, we got to know we have it in our blood to hurdle life, right? To get through it, right? To have this resilience, to not be broken by a broken system, right? To not be oppressed by the oppressor, to still rise ourselves up and know who we are under God, the creator, to be bigger than any obstacle or situation that we're facing. And I seen that in my mom at an early age.
For sure.
She kept on going to work. She kept on finding a way to make ends meet. And she took us to a women's and children's shelter when she felt it was necessary. And that changed all of our lives. And for me at that time, being a 10-year-old boy, not knowing all what was happening, that was a very tumultuous time too. I went to 3 different 4th grades and 3 different 5th grades. I went to like 17 different schools as a kid. So, I mean, really, man, when it comes to my story, and I tell it now as a part of my service work, it's rich with different experiences, from housing instability to the poverty to my mom being on drugs for a little bit, what I experienced in the schools through bullying and things like that, gang, turf wars and stuff. But also, let me say this. Here's the good news. I've always had an aptitude for learning. I've always been enamored by the classroom and the teacher and being a student. And though a lot of these things around me were chaotic and dangerous, in the classroom, I was always able to shine. I may not have been the best dressed, but I was one of the smartest ones in the room. And I always got respect for my intellect. And that ended up being a gift to me because after 18 years of growing up in North Omaha, Nebraska, I was able to earn a track and field scholarship to the University of South Dakota, which moved me to South Dakota in 2003. I've been here since, but in college, I completed my bachelor's and my master's and had a pretty fun and a highly accomplished student athlete career at the University of South Dakota.
Yeah. Listen, that whole story, and you're not even done with your story yet. That whole story, again, if I had a, you want to talk about like the story of resilience, a resounding message from all of our episodes so far have been how Black people have been able to be resilient all of these years through all of the struggles. Um, and how we're tired of having to just be resilient.
Dang.
Can we just be? Can Black folks just be? You said something about, and I can't remember his name, so forgive me, but Terrence.
Yeah.
You called him a difference maker.
That's right.
And you carry this book around,
That's right.
making a difference. What does this book mean to you? Who is it by? Tell us a little bit about this and why it's important to you.
It's good. Well, just making a difference generally is a great goal to have. You know, we don't exist to be stagnant. We don't exist to be dormant. And that sometimes we take setbacks or step backs, but the setback sets the stage for the comeback, right? Life is not wins and losses, it's wins and lessons. You know, you have to fail your way to succeed, right? There's all these different things that we can remind ourselves of what it's like to make a difference and not to be so critical when we take a step back or if we fall down, if you will. But making a difference is what we were born to do. We're here to make a difference, and you are making the difference every single day. Every person you encounter, you're making a difference. This is about being intentional about it. You know, dissecting it a little bit and being more intentional about how are you making a difference. I like to think of it in the form of leadership as well. It's not if you're a leader, it's where you're leading people to. It's not if, it's where are you leading people to. It's not if you have influence. It's what are you influencing people to do. So it's not if you're making a difference, it's what type of difference are you making. And so this book by, Steve Gillian is, something that I like to carry with me and peruse through. I'm actually more of a discourse person for education or audio. So it takes me a long time to read books. I read slow and I process slow, but I'm able to open this book, go through some pages and just really get a blueprint on making a difference in a positive way. He was a public speaker. I'm a public speaker. And it just really helps to sharpen the saw for me when it comes to having guys like Stephen Gillian, other leadership philosophers, motivational speakers. And, it's nothing wrong with being a copycat if you're copying the right cat.
The right cat. Man, tell me about it. Listen, so, okay, I want to talk about one of the difference makers. You're from Omaha.
Yeah.
And for me, the ultimate difference maker is also from Omaha. That's right. You know who I'm talking about.
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about Malcolm X a little bit and how he has impacted your life, particularly being, a young Black man growing up in the trenches of Omaha?
Yeah. Malcolm X is certainly prolific. And we have the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation Center there in Omaha.
Which you recently visited.
Yeah. And I have family members that help organize and coordinate programs there. They've had a lot of exciting new developments that are happening there with some grant dollars they've been able to get from the state. Finally, after years, 20 years, more than that, years and years of being really grassroots and bootstrapped. But yeah, the Malcolm X Memorial Foundation Center is there. Omaha, Nebraska is the birthplace of Malcolm X. And certainly things like that, where you have a Malcolm X or even a modern day Terrence Bud Crawford, people who make an impact on the world, it just gives you a type of hope and belief that you can too do the exact same thing from this same soil.
Yeah.
Right? Malcolm X came from the soil of Omaha, Nebraska. Terrence Bud Crawford came from the soil of Omaha, Nebraska. And so that just gives me a lot of affirmation, a lot of faith in what I haven't been able to accomplish yet. I look at my life and I know I'm a difference maker as well. I know I've done it in a local level, in a state level, a regional, and even national in some ways. But I truly believe that I have a calling for international impact, global impact. And having people like Malcolm X come out of Omaha, Nebraska helps me to believe that even more.
Absolutely. Man, I appreciate the tenacity. I appreciate your grind, your attention and detail. One thing that most people sometimes overlook is patience. And you've been on this ground for a long time. It's a journey. So you were a sprinter, but you're running a long race.
Yeah.
In this long race, particularly when you talk about success in the world of entrepreneurship and also leadership for that matter, one thing I don't want to bypass is the aspect of race and how that plays a part in what we want to achieve. Talk about some of the obstacles or life's obstacles that you've had to face in this particular career path. Now that you're an adult, after you've graduated, you have your bachelor's degree. I mean, as you told us, very successful throughout the collegiate era. Now that you're an adult, though, what are some of those things that you've had to face? I know for me particularly, walking in spaces as a black man and then being looked down upon right away was intimidating at first until I would hate to say I got used to it, but I kind of got used to it in this culture here. So
Yeah.
maybe talk about some of those things, how they impact you,
Yeah.
and then we'll kind of move into how you've had to overcome that.
Yeah. What I've learned now as an adult, from a black boy to a black man, from a child to a man, from a dependent to an independent, right? To being responsible now for my own housing, my own food, my own, clothing, and my family. I'm tasked with being a provider, and I feel that weight every day, especially as an entrepreneur. No opportunities are handed to me. I create every single one of them, and I am so pleased and happy to be coming up on 5 years of being self-employed here in February with TLC Services, and then 5 years with Her to Life Coach Foundation, the nonprofit, in June. And it is a testament to the tenacity, to the determination, to the faith, to the resilience. But also, as I've grown in this space, I've learned from other people. And I continue to learn from other people. My favorite thing to do is learning from others. And what I've come to learn and find out is these unconscious biases that people have is something that we can't eliminate, but we can prepare for. When people see a black man, their brain right away, most of the time, is going to a place of danger and fear. Right? And that's hard. That's hard to wake up every day with that condition. That subconsciously, before you even meet me, you just see me coming, and your brain
Already afraid.
subconsciously
Yep.
is wiring fear, danger, threat. Man, that's unfair, and that's hard.
So let's have a conversation, Terry,
Okay.
because this is my space. So we'll jump over this. So let's have a conversation. In the I'm in the era of my life where I'm not willing to give folks a pass on that anymore. Is it an unconscious bias? Yes, because of maybe policies, structures, systems, proper gap problems, I mean, like, all of the things. But you mentioned the word earlier that I feel heavily about, which is intention. And so if we know these things to be unconscious biases, we can intentionally change our bias. And if folks are not trying or willing to be intentional about changing those unconscious bias, I'm not willing to give them a pass anymore.
Yeah.
And so black folks have been put in a position to stand in the face of fear our whole lives. And if someone else is not willing to do the same, they don't deserve the same space that I do.
Yeah.
What do you feel about that?
I think that's fair. I think it's fair. I think that every single person here, every human being is presented with the opportunity to grow and evolve. We're more like plants than we realize. We're very natural, right? Like kind of you water it, you grow, like sunlight, like all these different things. There's a lot of metaphors that just we're supposed to evolve. If you're not growing, then you're dying. Right. And so it's never being okay with just remaining the way you are. And that's not to be dissatisfied or hard on yourself, but it's to know that there is more in you. And so things like bias, which is a new concept for a lot of people, right? So as an educator, Julian, because I educate on unconscious bias, I educate on equity and inclusion and these different types of things. And
I need to throw out the organization you with that also works on that.
so I do directly through TLC services, but then also through pathways to inclusive and equitable workplaces.
Because we want to make sure we're supporting the organizations that do the work too.
Yeah, here locally, I'm actually stepping into a board chair of the organization here in 2025. Those are the co-founders of the organization. We've been doing the work for 5 years.
So
And that's where, again, in that environment, I've had the chance to learn from some Willette Capers and Harriet Yoakum, and people in this community have gone before me who are Mart Blackburn and others that helping, the growing, evolving Terry as a professional learn the language and see things I didn't see before. And so as I've learned more about bias, as I've learned more about prejudice and marginalism and what it is to be marginalized, I think of my friend and colleague Tasha Smith at Sanford here, she's the head of DE&I. I have really fervent friends that are deeply competent that help to continue to help me to grow as a learner and makes me better as a leader. But what I offer often to those same folk is this awareness of what it means to be trauma informed and what the understanding of the science of adverse childhood experiences, the science of resilience, and what it means to be trauma informed. And at the base of being trauma informed, Julian, is the concept of safety. And every person, almost every, have been through some type of trauma. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Middle East, Canadian, you name it, global. Humans have experienced traumatic things. So now, as a leader that's trauma informed, understanding that the first thing, the foundational thing is to create safety, when I attempt to do with individuals that I'm going to challenge their bias or present them in an opportunity to challenge their bias, I have to create a safe environment for them first. Because you cannot influence a closed mind.
okay, so let's get deep.
I'm here for it.
Because what folks don't realize oftentimes is that when we toss around terms like unconscious bias,
Yep.
the idea or the perception is that we're talking just to white folks, but we're talking to everyone.
True.
Because we also have unconscious bias.
There you go.
Right?
Exactly.
One of the things that I've thought about here recently, particularly after the election, is our unconscious bias about ourselves. Now, you talked about trauma and you talked about providing a safe space. What I want to ask you about is maybe your thought process behind what I have been thinking about, which is, do you think Black men particularly feel more safe with white men in charge?
Whew. I don't know if anybody ever asked me that question. So pardon my startle. You asked me, do Black men particularly feel safe with white men in charge?
Yeah. And let me maybe dissect that.
Yeah, please. I would love to hear.
We have, as Black people, particularly some people, we've been taught to feel safe in systems that have not been created for us, have not been created to benefit us, and they've always benefited white folks primarily, right? In addition to that, we've also, as Black men, been taught and groomed and have grown up in systems that have taught us to embrace masculinity. So when you combine those two,
Yeah.
we feel safe with whiteness and we feel safe with masculinity.
Wow.
And that's something that we really have to face head on. Again, it's one of those fears. It's the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
What does it look like to embrace a woman in charge? What does it look like to truly embrace the femininity of leadership? What are those values? How do they benefit us? And how can we see past just white masculinity?
So here's what my gut is telling me. My instinct is telling me that we don't feel safe when a white man is in charge, but we are afraid to not comply.
So I know you got something else. Before you go further, let me maybe just add this question to your mind. if black women raised us, why don't we feel safe with black women in charge?
So just to add to the list, man,
Just to add to that.
okay, so I don't think we feel safe when white men are in charge because we know from the history what white men have done to our people. But because of what they've done to our people, the Willie Lynch mentality, all these different things turning us against one another, I think there's almost an unconscious fear that we have to not staying in line, complying.
Okay.
So it looks like buy-in, but it's really fear. It's not safety. It's not a sense of safety. That's fear being the pronounced and showing up as a level of control or compliance. So the work is moving beyond the fear and believing that we can exist and thrive and lead ourselves without, not only without their guidance, but that whatever their reaction or response is going to be, that like the juice is worth the squeeze. Like we can handle it, you know, because it's like kind of like a domestic violence situation. It just seems safer to stay in the abusive relationship than it is to leave it. If I leave it, I could be killed. If I stay, I'm going to be hurt. But if I leave, I can be killed.
Man, that's hard. Listen, but that's real. That's real. When you were talking, one thing that I was thinking about was mentorship. And I know you and I have both been mentored.
Are we willing to die for this? And that's where, Julian, for me as a community leader, as an advocate, I know others have died for this.
Absolutely.
And so I lay my life down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I lay it down.
Listen, we're coming up, you and I both are coming up on the age where MLK died. Come on. Coming up on the age where Malcolm died, right? Folks literally laid their life down.
I'm getting emotional because I have channeled those kings in all of my work for the last 20 years. I knew when I was at that predominantly white institution, leading our Black Student Union as the very first executive president of a Black student union at that predominantly white institution. I was the very first African-American student body president at that institution. Me and my executive team trailblazed diversity, equity, and inclusion at the University of South Dakota. And I was telling myself then that Martin Luther King died for this type of liberty and flexibility that I have. Malcolm X died for this type of liberty and flexibility that I had. People, the civil rights leaders and activists died and were beaten and bruised for this type of flexibility and access. And so when it comes to the point where, am I willing to step outside of this fear of what could happen to me in order to honor? The answer for me is yes. And that's why I have so much respect for you. Say, Terry, we can build our own table.
Yeah, we don't need nobody else table. Yeah, listen, I've been on that platform for a long time, man. Listen. First off, when this episode comes out, we'll be probably a couple weeks past the episode that Pastor T.D. Jakes had on stage yesterday, and me receiving that type of mindset actually came from a message that T.D. Jakes shared in his book, and he talked about really God giving us the ability to be intelligent enough not to have to ask anyone else for a seat at their table, because He gave us the ability not just to build our own table, but to build the chairs around that table too. And so I was done a long time ago. As soon as I heard that message, I was done asking someone to allow me to have a seat at your table. And God gave me the ability to do it myself. No, absolutely not. I'm going to do it for me. I'm going to do it for my family. I'm going to do it for my community. And I've been standing 10 toes down on this way all the time. Yes, yeah. Let me maybe jump back. Yeah, you're going to get me on my soapbox. This ain't about me. This is about you. Let me jump back into what I was talking about with mentorship.
Yeah.
Mentors, you and I have both served as mentors to young folks in this community and to even some older folks in this community, and also to each other.
Yes, sir.
For quite a while. I recently heard, and I don't know what to think about this. I mean, I kind of do. I'm leaning towards this way. But I recently heard someone say that Black folks are over mentor, and mentorship for Black folks is a value that we don't really value. And the way they broke that down is to say mentorship typically comes from those who don't look like you. It comes from someone who you aspire to be that you will never be. So when I look at mentorship in this community, we don't have a lot of older Black men that we can look up to that are in executive roles, that have led nonprofits. We just don't have it. So if we are seeking mentors in this community, we have to go to, and when I say these names, there's nothing, about them, but we have to go to the Jeff Griffins. We have to go to the Paul Higgins. But they don't share our experiences. What type of mentor can they really be, right? Especially if and experiences shape values that shape consequences. And that's a strong belief in the Black family, is that every action has a consequence.
Yes.
And so now that I've kind of on it out, because I don't even fully know how to grasp that yet, because I've been in this space of mentorship for so long.
Yep.
What are your thoughts behind that?
Yeah, so I think that when it comes to mentorship, I definitely don't believe you can be over mentored. Mentorship is an exchange of information and experiences.
So let me pause. I say that because you're heavily involved with one of your mentors, Jack Marsh, who's a friend of both of ours. Well, he started off as a mentor, and now he's a close friend of yours.
Yeah.
He's a family member.
Yeah, call him a godfather.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the reason I brought this whole mentorship conversation up, is because I know you believe in it.
Yeah.
And I want to maybe spread that conversation out.
Yeah, and so I think that you can be mentored by someone that looks nothing like you, and they can provide information, knowledge, understanding based on their experiences that can benefit you and help to prevent you from making the mistakes you would make without that guidance, or the mistakes that they have made that they're trying to prevent you from. At my company, I tell people you can learn two ways in life: mistakes and mentors. So essentially, you are learning from people who have the same experiences, professional. So the differentiation of what you're talking about is, how much of a personal mentorship can they give me? Jack still gives me a lot of personal mentorship as it pertains to being a father, because he's a father. He still gives me personal mentorship as it pertains to values like integrity, because that's a personal value of his as well, integrity. Professionally, different things with team building and scaling businesses and relationship building in the community. He's a Hall of Famer. He's in the South Dakota Hall of Fame. That says in itself he knows how to build relationships and be consistent in community. However, there are areas that Jack could never mentor me in.
Right.
Never. Because he don't have those experiences. He does not know what it's like to be marginalized based on your race. He does not know what it's like to grow up without a father being present. He does not know what it's like to grow up in poverty, to grow up in a dangerous environment where gunfire, right? Or whether that's my story or the story of some of our immigrants that we have over here and where they came from. There's certain things that Jack Marsh could never mentor me on. And he must have the humility to recognize that
part.
And not try to overstep or discount the mentorship that can come from someone else who can give me that.
I'm glad you said that, because that was kind of my next line of questioning. Is maybe not even a question, again, just a part of the conversation, is that is where I believe folks over mentor, is when they believe they are in a system of mentorship and they don't see where they fall short in mentorship, or where they can't be successful as a mentor. Good mentors know where they fall short.
Yeah.
And they align.
Yeah, they know where their mentorship ends.
Right.
For
sure.
And I would tell you,
and mentorship really never ends.
Right.
Mentorship never really ends, but they know where they can be successful in guiding someone to success.
And where they don't have the credibility to be the mentor, right? Like when it comes to mentorship, you're supposed to identify exactly what have this person guiding you to and through.
Yeah.
And then, so for them to know where they are, mentor you, and have credibility, and where they don't. And I'll tell you, Jack and I have had candid conversations, about things that I'm going through that I feel are race related, that I feel are related to what it means to grow up in poverty, and why when you grow up in poverty, you do overextend yourself for your family. This is just something we're wired to do. And so for some people, it doesn't feel like it's the right thing to do, to be taking care of your family so much and almost enabling them. But when you grow up in poverty, that's what you do.
Yeah.
And so we've had some candid conversations in regards to certain things he just can't relate to. But I also can take nothing away from how transformative the last 8 years of my life has been because of his mentorship in things like integrity, consistency, courtesy, sobriety, right? We need to touch in on that. You remember Face It Together's board of directors. I've been a member at Face It Together for 8 years. I'm coming up on 7 years of abstinence from no alcohol. Jack Marsh was a former board chair of that organization.
Jack was the one who recommended me, and I got it. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's like what he has done for me as a mentor, I will forever honor and respect and give him the nod for being a difference maker in my life.
Yeah.
But then there's areas where he can't do that, right? And that's where a relationship like you and me can come in, right? And so I like to introduce people to a concept called friendtorship, where it's like some people think mentors have to be 20 years older than you, and they don't. Right. You can have a friend who has a deeper depth of knowledge and understanding in a certain area, and they can provide you mentorship as well. Mentorship is more about a depth of experience, not how old you are, not much the age gap. And so you can have friends that are only a couple years apart, but you can guide me in the areas of creating our own structures and systems, being proud of who you are as a Black man, Terry. That's you, Julian. That's you helping me with that. Jack could never give me that, but you have given me that as my friend-tor. And then I'll come alongside in my own ways of, networking and relationshiping with a little bit of a gentler approach, or some safety here, or just communication in general. Because I've been studying communication and leadership fervently for 20 years. I'm not new to leadership and communication, right? I just mentioned I was the first Black president at a predominantly white institution.
Sure.
So here we are in this community that's predominantly white. Maybe I have a little bit to share in my own experiences that can mentor us as we navigate a predominantly white community, right? And so friendtorship is the thing I like to lift up too, and that you don't have to have a 20-year age gap to be able to influence one another in that way.
Man, I really appreciate that. And you and I have shared these conversations about our friendtorship a lot. And one of the things that I can just candidly say is that I appreciate the fact that we can pick up the phone and just, we can call each other to BS, but we also can call each other to hold each other accountable.
That's true.
For the things that we are doing or not doing. That's just community. And true leaders really can stand on the platform of accepting accountability.
True.
So now I want to kind of rope everything into all of those values that we've now talked about. You have a unique opportunity in Leadership South Dakota to grow your style of leadership, to grow your platform, to grow the relationships that you have been steadily building across this state. Talk about the work that you're doing in Leadership South Dakota and the impact that it's having on you so far.
Yeah. So, as my friend, I'm really excited to be a part of Leadership South Dakota. It's a premier leadership program in the community. It was started by Rick Melmer. He has a reputation that precedes him, but it was recently handed over to John Meyer over the last 2 years, and he also has a reputation that precedes him.
And John is phenomenal.
Yep. And so is Rick, right? And so this environment called Leadership South Dakota is highly competitive. It has a tuition, and so a cost, right, to be involved with it. There's opportunities for scholarship, for those who may have a challenge in that way. So it's great that option is there as well. And so it's competitive. And it is a cohort of, between 38 and 40 individuals. I think we have 39 in our group. And they are influencers from across the entire state of South Dakota in various sectors. Those who are familiar with Leadership Sioux Falls here, it's similar to that model where you get access to leaders and sectors that you typically wouldn't because they're not in your own sector. But what you gain from those leaders and their presentation of what their organization does, whether it's a poet that's here in Sioux Falls that we went to when I was in Leadership Sioux Falls, the superintendent of schools, the mayor. But now at the state level, when I'm in Leadership South Dakota, I'm heading out to the Air Force Base and I'm hearing from the colonel out there about what they got going on with all of their operations. I'm hearing from the CEO at Monument Health, a big healthcare system out in Rapid City. I'm hearing from chief executive officers at Daktronics and Brookings that are doing global commerce and even ag up there in Brookings. So far, Julian, we've gone to Pierre, Brookings, and now Rapid City. We're gonna off for the holiday. We'll head over to Yankton in January. We'll go over to a reservation in Mission in February, and then back here in Sioux Falls in March, and then we graduate. And so not only am I getting access or getting the ability to make relationship, to meet and greet all of these influencers and not only learn from their leadership approach and IQ, but then also to introduce myself as a potential resource to what they're doing if there is some synergy there, right? And so for me as a consultant on creating safe spaces for people from all backgrounds, as their workplaces and communities are growing and diversifying, I am absolutely benefiting in a major way, not only just in meeting the relationship with the presenters, but more importantly, the 38 other classmates that I have in my class right now.
Sure.
More than a handful.
Relationships are huge.
More than a handful of them are right here from Sioux Falls, but some are in Brookings, Watertown, Yankton, Aberdeen, Rapid City, and they are in pretty influential positions within their organizations. And we wouldn't have met, likely, not in the way that we're meeting through the cohort experience, where we're building a bond, where we're establishing trust, where we're breathing authentically with each other through exercises and work groups, and because we're getting presented to, but we're also doing exercises together. We're talking about ourselves. And I've already developed some really authentic bonds in a very short time in Leadership South Dakota. I'll tell you that the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of the Midlands already invited me to be a part of a $2 million RFP after our first session.
So explain what an RFP is, just brief.
A request for funding proposal.
Okay.
And so they do mentorship, and my organization does mentorship. And one of the challenges when it comes to partnering with nonprofits is being a part of the grant when it's submitted, because then once the grant is awarded, it's already restricted to what it was written for.
Right.
So if you can get in on an RFP process, you now set yourself up to be a part of that 3-year rollout, 5-year rollout. And after one session of Leadership South Dakota and authentic exchanges, the CEO at the Boys and Girls Club of the Midlands up in Brookings, who oversee Brookings, Yankton, Moody County, which is Flandreau and Vermilion, reached out and said, would your organization be willing to partner with this $2 million grant? And the answer was yes.
See, and that's huge because that directly impacts young kids of color.
Yeah.
Particularly because all of those areas are close to reservations.
Yes.
So now we're talking, and again, like you led me right into my next question. How can this experience that you are receiving, because you've talked about the benefit to you, how can now you bring that as a benefit to communities of color, but particularly the Black community?
I think the first thing, and for me, I believe this when it comes to leadership, is first that it inspires. I believe leadership begins with example. I think there's leadership coaches that are letting people off the hook too easily by jumping right to influence, because that's how John C. Maxwell defines it. Leadership is influence. So most leaders start there as a base, but I believe there's a step before that called, what's your example? What are you role modeling? Leadership is much, much more than about sharing information and having quick quotes and quips. It's about embodying what you're saying. It's about integrity. And so first and foremost, by me getting into the program as an African-American entrepreneur, it first inspires others to believe in the same. And so that's the first thing that it's doing. Secondly, it equips me with information to inform. Now I also can inform, and not inform from a theory perspective of the outside looking in, but from a lived experience. And that allows for me, when I'm working with people, to create more trust and safety, right? For us,
So there we back to that conversation.
right back to it. So, because for us, new environment means unsafe. Predominantly white environment means unsafe. And unless there is someone who has gone before me that I have seen that came out the other side, one, okay, now that gives me hope and I can aspire that I can. Two, if I can connect with them and they can help answer questions that I might have, tell me the experiences that they had, that's going to help me as the person who's considering develop more trust and a sense of safety to actually take the step. And so I'm really humbled by all of the experiences, because when I look back over my life, Julian, I didn't see myself becoming all of this. Others saw it in me, and I'm grateful for those who spoke life into me, who lifted me up, who exhorted me when I was full of doubt, insecurity, fear, and uncertainty. And so I just get to pay it forward now, and I've come so far in my life. I'm proud of who I am. I'm thankful to my mother. I'm thankful to guys like Terrence Mackey. I'm thankful to friends like you, people like Jack Marsh, and to pay it forward my lived experiences into the lives of other people is what I want to do for the rest of my life, God willing. I'm coming up on 5 years being self-employed, and I look forward to another 5 years and another 15, 20 years after that.
Yes, sir. So listen, we didn't even get. I just looked at my watch. Time is running out. We didn't even get to everything we wanted to talk about. Particularly, I love politics. Wanted to bring up politics. It didn't happen. So we might have to do a part two.
Let's do a part two.
But before we go,
Yeah.
there's one other organization that I want you to talk about. It's the Black Chamber of Commerce. It's that's being done surrounding that, because particularly all of the things, of course, that you had to overcome, how you're now setting yourself up for success with Leadership South Dakota, more success, I should say, with Leadership South Dakota, and now as it relates to the business world and the things you're doing in the business world. So he's talked about your nonprofit. Now talk about South Dakota Black Chamber of Commerce, and maybe tie that in.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm reflecting on the things I'm involved in. Leadership South Dakota, that's just one relationship I talk about. There's, like I said, there's 38 other influencers in that organization that I'm thrilled to be building with locally at Feeding South Dakota, Salmon's Financial Group. It's going to go on and on and on. And so I'm super stoked. The South Dakota Black Chamber of Commerce just incorporated this year in the state of South Dakota. In February, we brought and stood up the South Dakota Black Chamber of Commerce. We are a subsidiary of the National Black Chamber of Commerce and also the United States Black Chamber of Commerce. So Black Chambers of Commerce are entities that exist throughout the country. And so we do have roadmaps and mentors of people who have gone before us in their community that we can borrow and lean on, and we do. But also right here in South Dakota, being inaugural, being a trailblazer of it, it has been riddled with or saturated with the challenges that comes with that. But again, we're a Black people.
For sure.
We're filled with resilience, innovation, intellect, right, man? We're so blessed to be educated, and we're so blessed to be humble to continue to learn from each other. And so our president at the Black Chamber, Lynn Patterson George, our VP of Finance, Emmanuel Bassi, myself as Program and Services Director, we have other volunteers that help us out as well in marketing and communication. And we've been doing the work. It's been good. It's been fun. We do monthly mixers called Live at 5, where we'll go to a minority-owned business or a Black-owned business and bring a mixer to their environment, invite the community to come into that environment, see what they are exchanging in commerce. So, going down to James' shop here in town, James First Gen, he has a clothing store and he does community work there. Heading over to Windy City Bites and letting people get introduced to that cuisine, getting connected with Swan Daddies. We need to do that, right? And bring people in there as well. And so we'll do a Live at 5 mixer every month. We do education services. Most of them have been virtual. We have had a couple of in-person education events. But we're also really gearing up for a really special year in 2025 of special events. Last year, we had an event called the Her Health Summit. And so we partnered with the Vera and Sanford and really talked about the health equity issue, especially for women of color. And it went really well for the inaugural. We're going to do that again next year. But we're going to also step into a space for men and talk about their mental health and their relationship with that. I'm also really excited to have been charged with helping to bring some programming here that helps with men and women from reentry. And looking to provide services for them as they come post-incarceration, which already aligns with the work I'm doing at Her Life Coach Foundation. But certainly to be able to borrow and lend in more community partners, where we agree, where we align at the Black Chamber and at Her Life is I believe that entrepreneurship is a workforce solution for the formerly incarcerated. And the same thing, we're here at the Hub as your partner with the Hub, from the financial literacy, the relationship building, the leadership, so I really sense a great synergy between the Hub South Dakota, Hurdle Life Coach Foundation, South Dakota Black Chamber, in being a real solution for empowerment, for self-sustainability through business ownership, through entrepreneurship, through financial literacy. And then, of course, I'll continue to pepper in healing because I've been healed.
Yeah.
I now know my own traumas. I understand adverse childhood experiences. I provide statewide education on understanding adverse childhood experiences. And so I just think it's also important that I mentor my other community partners on the trauma-informed component of what we're doing as well. But absolutely, let's infuse financial literacy, business sense, and create more business owners in our Black community. And that's the core of the work at the South Dakota Black Chamber.
Yeah, for sure. And just kind of maybe to accumulate that, all of the organizations that you've even talked about today, the work that we're doing here, and the organizations that we partner with as well. We just recently did an event to where we were uplifting folks from our community, particularly our houseless community, to bring them into spaces of workforce development, workforce readiness, if you will. And so again, man, we ran out of time. I don't want to dig too deep into that, but that's just a testament to the work that's being done.
Absolutely.
By Terry Liggins. So Terry, I really, really appreciate the time, man. Before you go, is there any lasting words for the people out there? Just maybe give them a word of encouragement. You use the word inspiration. Give them some inspiration.
Yeah. I would just say this to those who are listening. As I said before, leadership begins with example. And there are certain components or attributes that constitutes mature and exceptional leaders. Our mission statement at TLC Services is to equip and empower difference makers to mature and exceptional leadership. One of the things that's required for that is humility. Being able to humble yourself to other people and their strengths, their entities, their missions. What you've seen today between Julie and I is an example of exceptional leadership. The ability to volley back and forth with one another and not to have any sort of fragility as it pertains to what he's strong at or what I'm strong at. We have to humble ourselves as leaders in order to be exceptional. And so I just really continue to be inspired and honored to have you as a partner, as a friend-tor, to model what exceptional leadership looks like. Also, gratefulness. Find some gratitude. Gratitude is a gift that you can give yourself. Gratitude actually puts you right into the moment of the here and the now, and it shields you from the anxiety of the future and protects you from the regrets of your past. So often we find ourselves living in anxiety and depression because we're thinking about the future and we're reliving the past. But what are you grateful for today? What are you grateful for right now? Gratefulness is a magnet for abundance. And so when I live in my gratitude for you, Julie and Baudouin in the Hub, South Dakota, in this moment right now, I have peace, I have purpose, and I lack nothing. Gratitude fills us up. I want to encourage you to find some gratefulness. And the final thing will be is honesty. And honesty shows up in transparency. Honesty shows up in candor. Candor is a form of honor. If I'm giving you the truth, it's because I believe you can handle it. Be truthful. Be honest. Have integrity. The truth will hurt, but it also sets you free. Pain is an indication of growth. We're going to experience pain as we grow. The truth sometimes hurt, whether you're giving it to someone else or you're giving it to yourself. And me being honest with myself is the most important thing. And so in my consulting work at TLC Services, Hurdle Life Coach Foundation, I'm often visiting those three attitudes: humility, honesty, and gratitude. And there's more, but my final encouragement would be to embrace those things, to believe in you, to be resilient as a people, and particularly a Black people, and support your Black-led organizations and your Black leaders. Love on them. Encouragers need encouraging too.
Absolutely, man. Really, really appreciate that. Again, thank you for your time. Thank y'all for listening to Roots and Revenue, and we'll see y'all next time.
Peace out.